Good morning. My name is Simon Nikwe, and today I will be making a presentation on perspectives in psychology. In today's presentation, I will focus on two key perspectives, which is behaviorism and cognitive psychology. I will describe the perspective, evaluate the assumptions and their theories, compare the two approaches, and finally show how they can be applied in contemporary issues. Now, from the introduction, we have psychology, which is science of the mind and behavior, multiple perspective, which is different explanations, and we are focusing on behaviorism and cognitive. Psychology is defined as the mind of behavior, as the science of mind and behavior. Over time, psychology have developed different perspectives to explain why people think, feel, or act the way they do sometimes. Each presentation has its own assumptions, strengths, and weaknesses. For this presentation, I will focus on behaviorism and cognitive psychology because they are both highly influenced and have real world applications. Now we are going to talk about behaviorism, which is behavior is learned from the environment. We will focus, and then it also focuses on observer behaviors and conditioning, which is classical and operant. Behaviorism suggests that all behavior is learned from our environment. It ignores thoughts, emotions, focusing instead on observer behaviors that can be measured scientifically. The two main forms of learning are classical conditioning, also shown by Pavlov's experience with dogs, and also operant condition demonstrated by Skinner with reinforcement and punishment. Now we will move on to the next slide, which is cognitive psychology. We will focus on mental processing, how we perceive, remember, or think, and how information is being processed, which we have the diagram here. Cognitive psychology looks at internal mental processing or processes such as perception, memories, problem solving, and decision making. It compares the mind to the computer, processing information through different stages. Cognitive psychology has influenced education and therapy. For example, the development of cognitive behavioral therapy. Now we move on to the next slide. Now we come to behaviorism with its key assumptions, which we have nature over nature, high determination, reductionist, which is stimulus response, which is our reactions, and empirical experience research. The key assumptions of behavior are that behavior is shaped by the environment, so nature is emphasized over nature. It is deterministic, meaning behavior is controlled by reinforcement and past experience. Behaviorism is also reductionist, which is reducing complex behavior to simple stimulus response links. Its strength is that it uses scientific empirical methods, and however, it neglects internal mental processing. Now we move on to the C slide, which is cognitive psychology and key assumptions. Now we have nature and nature influence, self-determinism, holistic view of the mind, empirical and non-empirical research. Cognitive psychology assumes that thought processing can be studied scientifically. It takes more balanced view of the nature and nurture and is described as self-determinist. Because while behavior is influenced by environment and cognition, individuals still have the same free will. Unlike behaviorism, it takes more holistic view of the mind, though some research is criticized for lacking ecological validity. Now we move on to the seventh slide, which we talks about Pavlov, which is the classical. We are going to talk about the theories of Pavlov, Wesson, and Skinner. Pavlov's experience with dogs shows classical conditioning. Dogs learn to associate a bell with food. Watson famously claimed he could train an infant to become anything depending on the environment. And also, Skinner studied operant conditioning in his Skinner box experience, showing how reinforcement and punishment shapes behavior, which nowadays it is very common, or it is common, which most people in our communities who do things are being sent to the prison for behavioral change or shaping of their behavior. These studies were groundbreaking but criticized for being based on animals, which may not generalized well to humans. Now we move on to some of the theories again, which is by Paget, by Goskai and Beck. John Paget proposed that children move through fixed stages of cognitive development. Vygotsky argued that Vygotsky argued that social and cultural factors shape thinking, introducing the concept of scaffolding. Aaron Beck developed cognitive theory, which later formed the basics of CBT. These theories have had lasting impact, practically in education and theory, but the same criticisms include small sample and cultural bias. Now we move on to similarities and differences. Comparing two perspectives shows both similarities and differences. Both rely on empirical methods, but behaviorism focuses only on observable behavior, whilst cognitive psychology investigates internal processing. Behaviorism is more deterministic and reductionist, whereas cognitive psychology is more holistic and allows for some free will. Both perspectives contribute valuable insight into human behaviors. Now we come to the terms like, which is mental health. One key contemporary application is the mental health. Cognitive and behaviorist principle combined in CBCT and in CBT. Sorry. A short-term theory developed by Aaron Beck. CBT helps people challenging negative thoughts and changes behaviors, making it highly effective for anxiety and depression. But however, it may not work for all disorders, such as schizophrenia, and requires a strong commitment from clients. Now we move on to the 11th slide. In education and the workplace, behaviorism is applied through reinforcement stages like praises or rewards to shape behaviors. Cognitive psychology contributes to training programs and design of learning strategies, focusing on how people process information. Both perspectives are widely used today, though each has their limitations if applied in isolation. Now, in conclusion, behaviorism and cognitive psychology offers both valuable explanation of human behavior. Behaviorism is focused on how we learn from our environment, while cognitive psychology looks at how we think and process information. Each has its strengths and weaknesses, but when combined, such as in CBT, they provide effective solutions to contemporary issues of the day. And now we come to the referencing from both our activists. This is the end of the slide. Thank you.